Hello, Game of Stakes players. We are live. Zaki and Jack coming back.
I like
We
that.
are here to give you an update on the state of the Game of Stakes network, the state of updates, and what comes next. Uh, cool. So, Jack, do you want to talk a little bit about where we are with releasing Tendermint and Cosmos, just like we did before? Because in this form, the YouTube Live situation doesn't support Q&A effectively. We're going to do Q&A through the Game of Stakes channel on Riot. So if you have questions, post them there.
That's a great point, Zaki. Questions will be accepted. So as far as releases go, currently we are waiting on a release for Tendermint 029 that's going to contain some breaking changes to proposer selection that should fix some of the issues we've been seeing in Game of Stakes, which is why we're waiting on those changes. There's a couple of other security critical changes in that release as well, so good to upgrade. And then from the SDK side, the items that we talked about last week, F1, Tombstone, refactor of the fee distribution, and
the new gas model.
Yeah, that one. A refactor of the way gas is working have all finished review and been merged this week. It was a big week of code moving on the SDK this week, so that's very exciting. And the plan is to have a release out this evening that I believe Zaki is planning on running a community testnet with before we hard fork Game of Stakes.
Yeah, so we're roughly targeting Monday for a community testnet launch. The goal with this community testnet is the biggest user-facing change that we're expecting with this new software update is the change to the way fees and gas pricing work. So the biggest sort of open questions there are, so mostly we want to use this community testnet to do like the normal QA that we do in a distributed setting when we have big changes, just to see whether or not there are state machine faults, etc. We're also trying to ensure that validators get experience with the new fee mechanisms. The fee distribution changes and Tombstone changes should be much less user-facing. The big change with Tombstone is that if you double sign, you can't unjail. You have to create a new validator. In Game of Stakes, this will basically mean that if you double sign after the hard fork, you're out of Game of Stakes, essentially. So that will be make things a little bit more interesting.
Zaki, one thing that you were just talking about there is like the fact that we're pushing this release out to the community to test. And I just want to give a little bit more kind of background on why we do end up doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Extensively about that. So especially with these proposer changes coming in Tendermint, this is a great example of something that's really, really difficult for us to test. So we do a bunch of simulation testing where we spin up nodes of 5 to 10 validators and create random messages to try to iterate through the state space and try to see if there are any panics. This has been a really successful testing method for us for catching all kinds of stuff. But when it's something really complicated like the proposer selection algorithm, a lot of those bugs aren't going to show up until it's on a testnet with live network participants changing their power dynamically. And we've just had trouble kind of hitting that particular state space with our simulations, and the live networks have done a much better job of that. So that's one of the big reasons why we do run these community testnets, to ensure that the releases are working properly.
Yeah, and really this community, we're getting pretty close to mainnet launch, and if you're planning on participating in mainnet launch, these community testnets kind of represent sort of a last opportunity to really do that. To get practice running, setting up your validator, doing Gen TXs, all of those pieces of the launch process are these are like kind of the last days for getting practices. So this community testnet that we're going to run next week, and then the Game of Stakes upgrade that we're going to push out sometime towards the middle of next week, based on how the community testnet goes, are all going to be really critical processes. but we're definitely um, we're definitely in sort of the last stages of that, where we are. So if do you have anything else you want to say about the release? Otherwise, I wanted to quickly just talk about the state of the Game of Stakes network.
No, nothing really particular about this release. We've kind of talked about it in the last two updates. So the major features are pretty well known. We do have a couple of other small fixes in the release, nothing really of note. As far as upcoming work, I think we're primarily going to be focused on fixing bugs and addressing audit issues. And then one thing that we're going to put a lot of emphasis in pre-launch is ensuring that the client-facing interfaces are up to snuff. So I'd just like to make a quick call out here. If you guys are running into any issues with the CLI that are not already reported on GitHub, please report those so that I can fix them. I am currently doing a major refactor of the CLI in conjunction with a couple of the SDK devs to try to make it more consistent across the different modules and throughout all the commands. So if you're running into any issues there, please report them. And take it away, Zaki.
So where we are with the network is the network seems to have sort of have kind of stabilized into a sort of steady state system. It looks like there is a pretty decent amount of transaction censorship going on in the network. It's definitely, there seems to be a bunch of cooperating groups of validators who are submitting each other's transactions to self-delegate, but everybody else's self-delegation transactions seem to be unblocked. One of the things I thought was interesting is I had a data center mishap on the occlusion validator yesterday. So we got jailed, and I had to unjail, and I was actually pretty surprised that the network didn't censor my unjail transaction. It would be sort of rational if you're a Game of Stakes player to be censoring all of the jailing transactions. But definitely, it's sort of interesting seeing what behaviors on the network are encountering a lot of censorship, what behaviors on the network are not encountering a lot of censorship. But hopefully, like what Game of Stakes was all about is about giving everyone who's involved in the Cosmos community validation process like a really good idea of what a pathological network looks like, feels like, what kinds of cryptographic evidence exist for it. It's really actually pretty good that we're seeing Game of Stakes sort of evolve into that sort of pathological, heavily censored, semi-functional state, because that gives us hopefully gives everybody a lot of experience in sort of what tools they need to build and how to detect networks getting into this kind of pathological state on the mainnet. And so, Game of Stakes is really it's performing the way we were hoping it would. It's really testing things in the way that our goal was to test. So all of that is sort of broadly happy, encouraging, and it makes me excited about. I'm excited about the upgrade, and I'm excited about how close we are to mainnet launch.
Was your data center fracas one of your personal most exciting moments of Game of Stakes?
No, I mean the personal most exciting Game of Stakes was just seeing people adapting to the mempool attacks were really especially because the documentation was wrong, and seeing who figured it out and got it right quickly was definitely cool. Also, the mempool attack, taking like a whole bunch of nodes offline and halting the network, and then the recovery process for that was pretty exciting. All of these things are just like enormously confidence inspiring in terms of being able to we've actually decentralized the knowledge of how to operate a Cosmos network to enough of the community that this will actually work as a highly available, highly stable, really stable piece of blockchain infrastructure that we're trying to produce here. And so the next big hurdle is that we're going to find out with mainnet launch is seeing whether or not the distribution of atom holders can at least run a network as well as the game of stakes participants are. So that's really exciting. I also keep hearing about hearings like people who are quietly participating in game of stakes and are not as involved, who are also saying that they're having a great time and learning a lot. Especially people who are kind of more involved in like blockchain research, computer science stuff. So that also is just like, again, why we did this, is we were in a position to run an experiment in computer science that no one in the history of this field has ever been in a position to do. And so Game of Stakes was really about exercising that. And I think in terms of like actually trying to understand what one of these networks looks like, we've learned a lot. And so yeah, it's this whole thing has been incredibly gratifying and super exciting. And it just seems like every aspect of the ecosystem has really been tested really well. And so I'm super excited to see, kind of the evolution of this network now as the Cosmos network and the Iris network launch. And we start seeing Cosmos-based blockchains start springing up all over.
Yeah. I mean, just to second your point about kind of these like network stops and starting and stopping events, like getting some confidence and operational excellence around that as a community, I think has been hugely confidence inspiring for me, because prior to this series of testnets, I don't think I had a great idea of kind of exactly what that looked like and how it would work. And now we've kind of been through each of the scenarios at least once. And yeah, looking forward to mainnet now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't actually think that anyone has ever seen or done this process of having a third of the network go offline, and then like people rebuild and restart their machines, and then things come back up. All of this stuff is incredibly novel and exciting.
Agreed.
So all of it is real good. Yeah,
not seeing a lot of Q&A today on the Riot channel.
Yeah, I mean it's late. Hopefully people are. It's late in Europe and
almost everywhere that's not PST.
Yeah. Oh, there's a question about vesting.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. F4455. We did get vesting merged in. We were hoping to have it in last Friday. We ended up having a little bit more review to do. We wrapped it up on Tuesday. There was also a follow-up PR to ensure that we can include vesting accounts in Genesis. And I do know Zaki has some plans to throw some vested atoms at Game of Stakes participants to kind of spice things up. Do you want to?
Yeah, I'm planning for both the testnet and the Game of Stakes upgrade to add to state vested atoms for all of the accounts, so people can delegate those, and we can make sure all of this works.
Oh yeah. F4455, did that answer your question?
F4455 is typing.
Anything else planned to spice up Game of Stakes?
Yeah, I want to put the. I haven't had time to fully think this out, and I'm open to suggestions. One of the thing I would like to put back in is a jailing period into Game of Stakes. It looks like, and I think that would potentially make things a little bit more exciting. There is this tension between making Game of Stakes more exciting and getting the QA that we want for stability in terms of getting to mainnet launch. And so I'm trying to figure out what the right balance is. We are thinking I think we're pretty likely to have a jailing period on mainnet launch. So I think it'd be nice to have a jailing period on Game of Stakes. So I think we should probably do that.
What about some of the other penalties? Have you thought about bringing like governance slashing or?
I think governance slashing is gone from the code. So I think that's
still there. We might be able to enable it. Anyway, not a huge deal.
Yeah. We're definitely not going to have governance slashing in mainnet launch, so that's not really that representative.
Another question: can we up min signed per window?
Interesting question. We could up min sign per window. This is a thing that exists also in tension with a couple of things that we are trying to figure out for mainnet launch, which is when do we rotate someone out, and how online does someone have to be before we rotate them out of? Do you need like a full blown data center meltdown like I had yesterday before we take people out? On one hand, it's a good sign that the network is so stable that we're seeing such a large percentage of the stake being up with such a low min size per window. So all of these things are just like really helping us understand the parameter space better, but need to think a little bit about. So we could up that. If we make that really high, it's going to make censorship and account takeover really quick, and especially given how concentrated the stake is right now, it will certainly increase the probability that some cartel is able to take over the network if we up that value, to 50% or higher. So we need to think a little bit about what we want to do, and probably talk a little bit with Jay about this. So there's that. Those are my thoughts. We'll probably have more to decide there early next week.
Awesome.
F4455 is typing.
Oh, Pete also jumping in there. Absolutely. We'll be doing this again next week as well, I believe.
Yeah, we'll definitely probably do Monday or Tuesday next week. I think Monday is technically a holiday, and I'm also having like a big long lunch meeting on Monday.
Pete's asking, what are the next steps after Game of Stakes? I can take the beginning of this one.
Yeah, why don't you talk through those?
So as far as where we are with launch, that big old L word, Pete. Right now, we've got 2 more weeks left in January. We've said that we would like 2 weeks of stability for Game of Stakes before we end the competition. So with the hard fork being midweek next week, that puts Game of Stakes ending sometime on the week of February 4th. So that's one item that's blocking launch. The other item that's blocking launch is currently we're undergoing a full code audit of the SDK to try to suss out some vulnerabilities before we get this thing live. We're anticipating that audit return back on the 8th. And right now planning for launch sometime very soon after that, within the next 2 weeks. So does that answer your question, Pete?
Yeah, and sort of the launch process is going to be, we probably want to do a test net with transfers disabled. So that test net needs to be spun up. We need a launch code freeze. We need Genesis transaction gathering, which the windowed we're going to gather Genesis transactions over. It's probably going to be something on the order of 48 hours. And we're probably just going to do them via pull request as we've been doing them so far. And then finally, we will have a final Genesis file, Genesis time, and the network will be live.
We're going to kick this party off. I like it. Oh, we've got a little bit of a crowd here.
Yeah, I know. Christine
slowly.
Has been writing a blog post sort of documenting all of these sort of next steps. And whenever that's ready, that'll go out.
Yeah, Pete, you're welcome for the L word. Don't say it too loud.
Yeah, I mean, Iris is launching on February 11th, and we're sort of like kind of on like a kind of similar cadence to that.
Yeah. All right. Well, Zaki, I think some good questions, good information about Game of Stakes and releases here, and looking forward to wrapping this competition up.
Yeah, wrapping the competition up, declaring winners, and moving on.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in this week, and see you guys next week.
You guys next week.